Foundation 45 is a 501c3 nonprofit that funds counseling services for mental health, addiction, and suicide survivors. In addition to providing services, it works to break the stigma surrounding these topics. Foundation 45 recognizes that musicians, artists, and creative types are often at a higher risk for issues with mental health and addiction. The organization's goal is to serve the Dallas-Fort Worth creative community by providing free, top-tier mental health and recovery services. You can learn more about Foundation 45 at foundation45.org. Foundation 45. Live fast, die old. I'm Andrew Sherman. I'm a Texas transplant who has always been in pursuit of art as a career. I've played in bands, pursued an acting career in Hollywood, but I found it behind the lens of a camera here in Dallas, Texas. I was born in New York, I've lived in Chicago, Los Angeles, Austin, but I love Dallas. There's a magical artistic scene in Dallas that mostly goes unnoticed to the outside world. This podcast is focused on what makes it so special and the people who make it thrive artistically. If you don't live here, and even if you do, you might not have heard of them. This is the Dallas Famous Podcast. So who you gonna be? Who you gonna be when you're all grown up? Who you gonna be? Who you gonna be when you're all for us? Yeah. This week on the season finale of the Dallas Famous Podcast, we're joined by Kenny Withrow, the iconic guitarist of Edie Brickell and New Bohemians. A cornerstone of the Deep Ellum music scene, Kenny has not only helped shape the sound of the New Bohemians, but has also been a creative force in numerous other projects, collaborating with legendary artists and constantly evolving his craft. From playing Grateful Dead-inspired jams to experimenting with unique songwriting processes, Kenny's career is a testament to musical versatility and innovation. In this episode, we'll hear candid stories from Kenny's decades in music, including his reflections on the heyday of Deep Ellum, the band's evolution, and his approach to improvisation and collaboration. It's an insider's look at a career that continues to inspire, making this a must-listen for fans of Dallas music and beyond. Don't miss this deep dive into the life of one of the scene's true originals, Kenny Withrow. We are back at the Deep Ellum Community Center. We've got guitarist Kenny Withrow. You are so Dallas famous, and then some more, I would say.
Oh, that's very kind of you.
Yeah, no, I mean, I knew who you were long before I knew you were from Dallas, or I knew that Dallas was cool, or that I hadn't even been to LA yet. I was like in, high school, like checking it out. You're older than me. Yeah.
I am.
You seem contemporary, but I mean, that album was out in what, 88? 88.
Yeah.
Okay, so I just graduated in 88. See, I was a freshman in college. Yeah. And Circle is my favorite song. I'm just going to say that at the top.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, I don't know. I was a moody motherfucker, I guess.
Well, thank you. Thank you. That song was interesting. We wrote it early on. We were real young and stuff, still playing. And I remember we were playing the library in Denton, which was like a very, very small little place. And we go into Circle, and we're a bar band. Come on, we're like Deep Ellum band. We're playing to drunk people. and we started Circle of Friends, and it's a ballad, it's a ballad playing for a bunch of college kids, and literally the whole place goes arm in arm and they swaying back and forth, and they're mocking us for sure. I mean, they're making fun of the song, and so we don't know what to make of it. We weren't even sure we should play it again, and that's funny how it became a thing. But then once a record company came to see us, we played a whole gig and played our butts off and jammed and did all this stuff, and they were like, yeah, we like the ballad, we like Circle. And it was like,
wild.
Oh, okay, all right. Yeah, it was the 80s. It was a weird time.
Yeah, that's weird. Okay, I mean, do you think that that show was like the moment that got you guys signed, or was it kind of like already going to happen one way or another, you think?
Well, that particular show, some people from Geffen came out. There was a woman named Kim Bowie who did the Sounds of Deep Ellum record, and she kind of passed our tape on to Geffen Records when we had played on the Sounds of Deep Ellum record. And anyway, so they came to a couple gigs. This was the second gig they came to at Popsicle Toes on Greenville Avenue. Classic place. They had bands and stuff in the late 80s. After being sort of a funk place in the 70s. Anyways, they reopened and we started playing there. And like I said, we played all night and we just were sweating, thought that we were really awesome playing all this stuff. We're like, yeah, we like Circle. We like the ballad. And we were like, okay. It is a good song though. Yeah. It's a classic.
Okay. Well, I mean, we back up a little bit. I before you came out, I was like, oh, there's so much bio about you. But we're Dallas famous, so we know you're from Dallas. What part did you know you're from?
What part of Dallas am I from?
Mm-hmm.
I'm from East Dallas.
Okay.
Yeah, I moved to Texas when I was 5.
Oh, okay.
Well, I didn't. My parents moved here when I was 5 from Worcester, Ohio.
Okay.
And then, I just grew up in East Dallas, went to Lakewood and Woodrow Wilson, and then Booker T. Washington, Arts Magnet.
Right.
As old people call it, Arts Magnet.
Right. God, so many people from Booker T. I was funny because I had Amy Curnow on, and I was like towards the end of the interview, and she's like, and I teach at Booker T. And I'm like, I've been trying to get a teacher from Booker T on, and I've had one on the whole episode. I didn't freaking know it.
I didn't know she taught there.
Yeah, she teaches.
That's amazing.
Voice there now, yeah.
Oh, cool. She's teaching voice.
Yeah, I hope that's what she said. I haven't actually edited that one. Let's do it again.
What a great teacher for that school. That's great.
It's perfect. Yeah, no, I know they just had a big Booker T concert, and she was there involved. So I know that part's true. I'm pretty sure she said voice, but we can check that later. But yeah, did you meet like the guy? Oh, first of all, let's start like, because we have people that haven't heard every single thing about you probably don't know this stuff. Like what started it for you with music? Like do you remember the first time you're like, that's more than just something in the background?
In terms of music turning me around, I just was always attracted to it. I was always kind of a quiet kid, youngest in the family and stuff like that. So I kind of made my own friends and was kind of by myself a lot. So music was an outlet that was like, oh, I like that. That's heady. That's something going on that I could like internalize. And I remember Horse with No Name and some of these some of these songs that were popular at the time. I remember the first song I really freaked out on was Free Ride.
Okay.
Come on, take a free ride, that song.
Yeah.
I remember was jumping off my my bunk bed and just freaking out, just like, music is making me do this. That was definitely a moment when I was like, yeah, there's something going on here. This is fun. Just freaking out to whatever this song is. And it slowly went from there. And basically I was a real quiet kid, and I thought I could probably play an instrument. That's a way I could express myself that would probably be a little more comfortable. And I wanted to play, I was in elementary school, and once a year they'd come by and shop different instruments. Do you want to be in the orchestra, right? And I either wanted to be flute or drums, but my parents weren't into it. They weren't going to let me hit drums,
Sure.
So anyway, so I didn't get an instrument for a while, and then one Christmas I got a guitar. I really wanted to be a drummer.
Okay.
But those are too loud. It was
weren't gonna
not going to happen, yeah. I still am a drummer inside.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, it's funny because like I was a singer in high school, and I played little keyboards and stuff, but my drummer like would leave the drums at the basement, and my parents were cool about it. So I feel like the reason I could play other things was because I really developed my rhythm early on.
Sure.
So like, because like I'm not a lead player, I'm a rhythm player when I play, and so so you couldn't get the drums until you got a guitar. Was that like a consolation prize, or did you ask for the guitar?
It was definitely, we'll get him a guitar. They knew I wanted to play something, and they knew I wanted to play drums, but somebody decided a guitar was acceptable, and so it was a little acoustic guitar. I loved it. I was freaking out.
Yeah,
I immediately was into it and learned 25 or 64. Yeah, and that and.
I don't know why. I got the impression, maybe from the last interview that I listened to, that you weren't as into the contemporary music at first, but that's not true. It sounds like you were very much into all that stuff.
Early, sure. Yeah. Well, I had a big brother, so I listened to what he listened to.
Gotcha.
Access to whatever radio and thing. Being the youngest in the family, you got what you got. I wasn't allowed to touch a stereo in the living room, so couldn't do that. And then, I just listened to whatever my brother had hanging around, and I got some of his records. The first record I ever got as a Christmas present was Paul McCartney, Band on the Run, and a New World record, ELO. I was
cool.
Both of those records. And, you could sit with a record and read the lyrics while you're listening to the song and look at the art. And it's really interesting, It'd be nice if there was a digital way to sort of do that. I mean, we're on our way to, holographic imagery with your album as well, and being in a 3D. I guess that'll be great. But I mean, at that time, it was kind of like that. You had a visual, and you're reading the words, and you just had all this extra meaning to it, It's like
totally.
Packaging is nothing now, everything's digital. But it's coming around. I love what Tim is doing. He just did
the planetarium stuff.
The planetarium thing is so cool.
Very
I'm really
cool.
proud of him. I've known him a long time.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah. I mean, it makes sense. You guys are probably playing around the same time.
Well, I knew him as Yamaha for years. Tim Delato. Yeah, we both played at the same park, Williamson Park. Well, I know it as Williamson Park. Some people know it as Lakewood Park down on Williamson Road. And he lived right there, and he had a Yamaha motorcycle.
Oh, okay.
And I used to see him. Called him Yamaha. We hung out few times and everything, and I literally only knew him as Yamaha until years later. We got signed and we were playing the House of Blues, and it was a big sort of, Geffen was there, they kind of set up the gig. It was sort of a we got signed gig, and a lot of people were there. It was in Dallas. It was a big deal. And they had a little trailer for us out back, and a guy was bringing drinks for us and walked in. I was like, Yamaha. Hey, Kenny. I was like, Tim freaking DeLauder. He's like, yeah, man, how you doing? And he was the guy bringing in our water. You know, it was before he had played. You know, him and Julie were real good. Were still high school sweethearts, and they were still making demos and stuff like that, which became Trip and Daisy and stuff like that. And that's a whole nother story I won't go into.
Yeah, that's wild that you guys. Yeah, I mean that makes sense, but still, it's wild how small this like community is here.
Sure.
You know.
Yeah.
So when like you start messing with the guitar, like at what point did you go, I'm a guitar player now? Like how long did it take for you to feel that way?
Immediately.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, in retrospect, that makes a lot of sense.
I mean, you know, I probably was young and looking for stuff, you know. I've matured, and I don't really look at myself as a guitar player anymore. You know, it's more of a person. It's what I do, not what I am, stuff like that. You know, all that existential stuff that happens when you get older.
Right. Yeah.
It is kind of real though. It's funny.
It's a relief though in a way.
It is.
You don't have to. Yeah, the pressure goes down.
Absolutely. No, but at the time I immediately was like, yes, I can do this. And it never seemed hard to me to play guitar. And my sister's boyfriend, Mark Grebe, played guitar, so he showed me how to play a couple tunes, some Bad Company, stuff like that. Ted Nugent, yeah. Mm-hmm. I admit I loved Ted Nugent when I was a kid.
Yeah.
And some of those records are amazing. It's too bad what happened to Ted, but I loved Ted. I loved him as a kid.
Yeah, it happens.
Yeah.
Okay, and then, when did you start like playing with other people, like bands or just jamming, or how did that start?
Well, I had a good friend. His name was Sparky Graff, and he was a drummer. And I knew him already before I started playing drums. And he had a buddy named Barry who drove a wrecker. He was crazy, and he played keyboards, and I would go over and listen to them, and it was like the loudest thing I've ever been around. His drums and like this keyboard, he'd play it through like an amp, distorted. It was a thing. And then I got a guitar. I was like, well, heck, I'll start playing guitar. So I eventually started going to Sparky's house, and we did guitar and drums, and we had a little band and did the talent show in the 7th grade at J.L. Long Middle School. And actually, we did 2 of them. We did 7th and 8th grade. And we did the talent show, and then I definitely was a guitar player. Uh-huh. That's what I was known as a guitar player then in school, because I was extremely quiet kid and nobody knew me, and until the last day of school. And I was in the talent show, and I was popular for half the day. It was awesome.
Nice. Excellent. Well, then, and so obviously you got to the level that you're going to Booker T. So, do you remember like getting accepted to Booker T? You remember that moment?
Sure. Yeah, I didn't. Mark wasn't around as much, and I was by myself learning guitar, so I made up songs. Like after my parents would go to sleep, I'd go out on the front porch and I'd play guitar on the front porch. I was known for it, like hours every day. And I'd just make up songs because I didn't know songs. I didn't really have the patience to learn them, to be honest with you. It's just the way I learn learning can be challenging for me. So I just made up songs. So when I went to the audition, he said, what do you want to play? I was like, well, I'd like to play something I wrote. And so I wrote a little song called Moving On, I think it was called. and he said, hey, you're getting around that pretty well. But he stepped over to the keyboard and he hit an A. Ding. I don't know if that's an A or not. That's probably a C. But I might have to check that out later. But
I can detune if I need to.
But he went and he hit a note, and I knew what he was doing. I was like, I tuned to the radio. I knew that my guitar was off from standard tuning, and me telling him that I knew the difference, I think got me into the school, because he was like, okay, he knows what's up, because he went and hit A just to see if I would know what was going on. I said, yes, I know that's out of tune. I tuned to the radio. But anyway, I played one of my original tunes, and once I started going to Booker T, that's where I got turned on to lots of music that changed me forever. It's where I wouldn't say jazz. I appreciated jazz. I bought a Pat Metheny record. I was really a rock player. I'm a rock player. And jazz I didn't appreciate in terms of swing and stuff. I didn't really care for it, you know,
Yeah.
and that's what people were learning. But that's where I learned. In one day, in this dude's van in the parking lot, I got turned on to Bob Marley, Mahavishnu Orchestra, and Devo, all in the same day. And so that's where, you know, I really was expanding my Rush horizons, because as a freshman, you know, I learned about Rush and I was very into it. And you had to know how to play Rush tunes in Lakewood or in Dallas. If you were going to be a guitar player and you wanted to be in a high school band, how well can you play Rush? That was just a thing. There was a bass player that was around Dallas, and if there's anybody in Dallas listening to this, they'll know what I'm talking about. There was this bass player. He looked exactly like Geddy Lee, and they had this Rush band that was incredible. I mean, he sounded exactly like, you know, it's just weird. Some people that come along and it's like, wow, that's what he's supposed to do. He's supposed to be Geddy Lee.
Yeah,
like,
that's weird. Yeah.
And they were incredible. I would love for somebody to tell me what happened to that guy and that band. And that's my own personal story.
That's a standard, by the way, because I mean, when I was playing, like, I remember going to someone's house and it's like, ooh, he can play Tom Sawyer. Oh, he can do it with one hand. You know, that was like the standard for the drummers anyway. You know, I wasn't even at that level at that point, so I was just like watching in awe. But.
Yeah, if you could play La Villa Strangiato, that was like, okay on guitar. That was the thing, or Xanadu.
I admit, I mean, Rush is great. I mean, I was joking with my niece. I was like, when you go to Rush shows with your dad, are you the only woman there? You know?
Yeah, right.
Anyway.
Exactly.
So you Booker T, you learn all this stuff. Like, when did the Dead come into your brain?
That was a bit later, to be honest with you.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
After New Bohemians started?
Well, my roommate was John Bush, the percussionist in New Bohs, and he was definitely a Deadhead. Right after high school, I moved to Florida to live with my dad for about a year. And different things happened in Dallas. People were getting on and doing stuff. Everybody had gone to college and different things. And I was calling home and seeing what was going on. Called my friend Kenny Stern, drummer for the Dead thing. And was like, what are you up to? What's going on? I was like, what do you listen to these days? He goes, dude, I'm pretty much only listening to the Grateful Dead. And I was like, really? Why? You know, I totally did not get that at all. He's like, I don't know, man. They're just kind of the thing. And that I didn't go out and start listening to him because the Dead I'd heard was cool. You know, it just kind of was a wash to me. Sure. And then my friend John Bush, they were roommates, and he also was they were all into the Dead. So when I got back to Dallas, there was already a thing happening. And then John and I became roommates. And so I would hear the Dead. One day in particular, nothing ever really seeped in until one day in particular, everybody was passing tapes, you know. Mm-hmm. If you were cranking a tape, it could have been in fact, in this case, it was a show that had just happened. Anyway, he's playing a show. It's in the afternoon, and they get to the space portion of the show. Like, once you get into the 80s, there was a space and drums and space every show. There'd be drum solo, and then they'd freak out, you know. So they were in the space section of the show, and I'm listening, and we're talking, and I'm like, so when's this show from? And I'm thinking it's going to be a long time ago because they're freaking out. I mean, there's like cacophony of freak out going. And I was like, yeah, when's this from? And he said, last weekend. And I was like, this is at a stadium? They're freaking out like this in front of a stadium full of people, like atonal, losing their shit, you know? And he was like, yeah, it was last weekend. And then because that part of the band I really liked. I'm a natural improviser. There was a group that came to Arts Magnet called BL Lacerda. It's a Dallas, a legendary improv band. They're a neoclassical improv group where they have 5 people in the band. Each person represents one section of a orchestra. There's a percussionist, there's a woodwind, there's brass, and strings. And so they had all the sections, and one person would do it, but they would improvise. And they came and did a clinic at our school, and they're improvising, they're doing whatever, and we're all kind of like, what the hell? You know, we didn't believe they were improvising. Finally,
it was that good, you mean?
Yeah, it's that good. Okay. And it's over our heads. We're like, I don't know. It's very avant-garde. A kid sneezes. So Kim Corbett, who became a real good friend of mine, he sneezes. He's on stage. Then they stop and the celloist, he sneezes. Then they have the sneeze jam. And then that just dawned on me like, okay, Music, you can make music out of any raw materials. That just opened my little head wide open. Yeah. I was just like, oh, well, then I'm just going to look at everything like that from now on. Anything is music. Life is raw material. Let's just arrange it how we want, and that's music. And it was like mind-altering to me. So we would get together and have these improvs. We would improvise together, and it's before I realized the Dead improvised so much until that moment. And then I realized, and that kind of married me into the improv aspect of the band. And I liked the other one and the out stuff, the straight improv, more than I was like a folk person. Like I didn't really even care
You weren't singing Uncle John's band and stuff.
I didn't really care for, the folky kind of stuff.
Sure.
And it's taken me till real recently to totally appreciate it. It's just a taste thing, stuff that, but I come around where I am in life now. It just it affects me way more.
Yeah.
I didn't have the patience for it when I was younger. I didn't, because I was dumb.
People who like the song circle like American Beauty a lot from the beginning. Just
nice.
Putting that out there. Anyway, okay, so you got the improv is into your brain. Like when did the Bohemian? Because I know Bohemians was a thing before it was with Edie. So what how did that kind of become? I mean, you said you were living with John, but how else did that develop?
Well, in terms of New Bohemians coming together, Brad and Brandon and another guitar player named Eric Presswood started the band, and we had all gone to Richland College, and they all started kind of hanging out and sort of formed a band there at the college, and I played in the jazz band there with Brad and Brandon. Anyway, so they started playing parties with our friends and stuff, and they were known as New Bohemians, and they kind of wanted a singer, and some different friends of mine sang with them at different times, and they'd have parties and let people sing with them, and they were just kind of open. And then Edie sat in with them at Calm Eddie's Comedy Club one night after drinking the legendary shot of Jack Daniels, and gets up and does that. I was there the second time, and they were playing at Calm Eddie's Comedy Club after the comedy act, and she was in the audience, and she got up and improvised with them.
She just jumped up like she didn't know anybody?
Yeah, she didn't know anybody, and her friend Heather Azell brought her down, and she'd already done it once, and I was there the second time.
Okay.
And she just got up, and she sang some of the songs that became real songs. There was something called Black and White Social Disease. I think she made it up that night. I don't know, because I remember her singing it that night, and it's a real song now. So I don't know. Maybe they practiced. I don't know. But so that's how that band came together, and I pretty much, they weren't sure if they were going to have her in the band. I was like, if you don't get her in a band, I'm going to start a band with her. Anyway, just through osmosis, I joined the band, and John was my roommate, and it was natural for him. John joined the band because we opened for Bo Diddley at Poor David's Pub. And
Poor David's Pub?
Yeah.
Jeez, really?
Yeah. So we were going to open for Bo Diddley, and we were going to be the band. He just shows up with his guitar and not even a cable. You got to have an amp. He has all of his effects in his guitar. Like literally, he has effects pedals that are modded into his rectangular guitar. And so he just shows up and plays. So we were going to be his band. We were going to play and then be his band for the night. And we checked out a bunch of records, and there were bongos there. It was like, John, you must come play percussion. So he played percussion with us that night, and it was done. And he was in the band after that.
Nice,
yeah.
Nice.
It was really, really, but it was great playing with Bo Diddley, though. He had speaking of the Dead, Estimated Prophet, some of those, the Waka Waka song, like I use for the What I Am.
Yeah.
The Wak Wak Wak. It's what's called a envelope filter. He had one in his guitar.
Huh.
Yeah, and he had heard me play it earlier, and he kicked that thing on, and we're in a vamp part, and he brings the band down, and they're just real low. And he looks at me, and he kicks on, and he goes, wak, 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 and he wak, wak. And he points at my pedal, so I turn on, and we have this little, wah pedal conversation, man. Oh, wow. And just back and forth. I mean, there's a tape of it somewhere.
That is so cool.
I would love to hear that. But what a great, great guy. After he was really encouraging to us, he called us into David's office after. David said, Bo wants to talk to you. So we go in, and he was singing one of our songs called Every Day. I walk in the door, and he's singing every day. Yeah. He's singing one of our songs. I was like, hey, what are you? And he said, you guys are going to do good. You guys are going to, and he just for an hour just sat and told us we're going to do well. He said, don't change. It was really beautiful.
That is amazing.
It was beautiful.
Wow, that is amazing. So you brought up that solo in that song, which I'm sure you've heard other people tell you what it meant to them, but for me and my crowd, we were like, oh my God, there's a new band that sounds a little bit like Jerry, like yay, like that was our thing. I don't know, but I remember you posted that article where Jerry said that he kind of like comped the solo one night or something along those lines.
I think there's a song called A Little Light or something. I've heard somebody say something like that. I don't know that story. I only heard that real recently.
I saw like an article about it where he like, I thought he comes off stage and he's like, hey, did you hear I was kind of comping that kid's solo?
What I'd heard, and maybe there's two stories, is that there's a song called Just a Little Light. And when he was in the studio playing the solo, he said, I'm playing like the guy who plays like me for the solo. And he was kind of making a joke
right.
that he needed to cop this other guy's
I'm
trip.
guessing your story's probably more accurate.
They could both be real.
I thought you played with them on stage. I didn't realize you only opened. Like I made a comment on Facebook. I'm like, I'm so smart about all this stuff, but
almost.
But it's. I mean, you opened for them. What was that experience like?
I was frightening as hell. You know, I mean, the actual. You know, I mean, it was kind of a blur a little bit. I did the best I could. I was a little scared and stuff like that, but I think we did pretty. Considering the situation, I think we did pretty well. Mm-hmm. Opening for the Dead it's a little bit of an audition the first few minutes you're playing, if people want you there or not. You know, you were playing at somebody else's party in their living room, and you know, and people were very, very nice to us. And Jerry told me that. He said except for Sting, people were coolest, you know, about the coolest the audience had been to an opening act, because they could be kind of rough. Oh, okay. Yeah. And we did Hard Rain's Gonna Fall, and people really liked that, the Dylan tune. Nice. And that was definitely a moment, and getting people together and stuff like that. But, you know, we finished the first tune the first night, and I'm like thinking, yeah, okay, all right. Got through that, not too bad. I look to my left, and there's Jerry on a road case, you know, sitting there with his head in his hand, and a cigarette, you know, in his hand, and just looking with a big smile on his face with his girlfriend standing behind. And I was just like, I mean, he's close. I mean, he's right next to it. I just kind of had to go, all right, there's Jerry. Yeah. He had to watch me play. It was all right, but, you know,
a little nerve-wracking.
I had to fight through it. It was, hey man, there's worse things than having Jerry Garcia sitting there watching you play.
Yeah. I have to admit, like I've said this before, every show I go home from, I'm like, yeah, but it wasn't Jerry.
Yeah.
It's just I'm ruined, I guess.
Jerry and Phil negotiating music is such a huge part of the Dead to me. Mm-hmm. Like that is the mystery of standing in front of them, like the Greeks 86. We went out to California, to San Francisco, Berkeley to see the Greeks, best place to see them, and them negotiating together, just like that is the Dead to me. Because I mean, you know, I knew about music then. You know, I'd studied, you know, I knew what the heck was going on, but I watched Phil, and I literally, like, I don't know how he does that. Mm-hmm. All the way to the very end. I mean, there's a lot of people who can do aspects of Jerry and do a pretty darn good Jerry, even, because there's strong characteristics that you can grab onto, you know, the slurs, and there's things that you can kind of Jerry out and get a tone. But Phil, some people can do some part of Phil. I think Bob from Forgotten Space is excellent at it. He understands the low end and sort of being out of the way, the creepy sort of thing. Mm-hmm. But then there's the upfront, in-your-face aspect of Phil that's like, I'm playing lead right now for the next 20 minutes, and the band's following me. Yeah. And I haven't heard any bass player do that.
That's tricky because, like I can see that's like the whole uniqueness of him ultimately. Is like, because that is not a bass player personality at all. And if you're going to be a lead bass player, you're going to overdo it probably most of the time, you know? Yeah,
I heard a show the other day, and he was, you can't say driving because they're all improvising. Sure. But you know, there's a point to this arrow that's going, and it was him for a long time. Yeah, and I don't know if there's other bass players. It takes a lot of chutzpah to do that. You gotta have a lot of determination and intent, and you have to have a lot of. You got to be able to hear it. Yeah. He's hearing it. He's not forcing this. He's like doing it because that's the way he plays. Yeah. Yeah. It's the Phil zone, right? I mean, it is. It's like what's going on. What's going on there? Yeah. It's very well. So very glad I saw so many shows, man. I did saw one Phil and Friends in, I forget Oakland, I think it was. And I remember thinking, but Phil's not the best singer. It was amazing. I wish I'd seen more. It was so great. Nice. Yeah. Okay. Where are we? Oh yeah. So, Edie's in the band, you guys, but I mean that was like kind of like a super like a spaceship, right, for a little while.
like the climb of that, or am I wrong? I mean, I'm just asking. Like, was it pretty like meteor? I can't even say the word.
Meteoric.
Yeah,
is that a word?
It is now, right now.
Yeah, I mean, there was since the first time we got together as a band, you felt that it was just growing, you know. Mm-hmm. Every time we played, you could just feel, I don't know, you can just feel the energy around something, like you're doing something, like people are probably going to talk about this to their friends, and they tell friends and things like that. And the Dallas Morning News came down and put Edie on the cover of the Arts and Entertainment, and that was that. And every one of our gigs was big after that. Huh. And then they came to, like I said, we played on the Sounds of Deep Ellum, and all of a sudden there were people coming to town to sign bands, and then we kind of got signed. It was kind of just one thing after another. It was like a succession of things, and it seemed to have, you could feel a momentum that was just kind of happening. And we handled it pretty well. You know, I probably could have practiced more and been a little more professional, but we were very arty as kids and shit like that. But and then we make the record, and the record was, you know, it was difficult to make the first record. Making a young improv band into okay, play the song, but this is the ultimate version. That's what messed with me the most. You know, I couldn't play something the same way once. You know, it's funny. I hear that Phil says that. I've always said that because I really can't. I mean, I have a hard time repeating myself. Yeah. And so it's tough in the studio.
I mean, those solos. So, like, are you saying like those were kind of, they started improvised, and then you just kind of got how did that go? Like, how did your solos go in the recording studio?
Some of them, well, like What I Am solo, I had we made a demo called It's Like This and stuff, and so
a blueprint kind of.
It is, yeah. You can hear that's the way I started the solo, and then it didn't really ever go to the upper register. I kind of, in the middle of it, I kind of just chilled. I kind of made it a chill solo, and then we went on. And I have to give credit to the guy from Geffen Records who was in the studio. This is the one and only time this person gave a good suggestion. And he said, well, why not take it to the upper register and end big? And I was like, okay. Half the solo I'd already recorded the solo, and they did what's called punching in. They're like, in the middle, we're just going to play along. So I played along, and I didn't know when they were going to press recording, and I played along, and I just went to that, and that whole high thing happened. That's me improvising. That's me the first time playing that.
Oh, nice.
And he was right, and that's the way the solo ended, and that was, so it was really, it was a one take for the first half and one take for the second half. Huh. So
did you go in knowing that was going to be the single, or you kind of just figured that out later?
No, we did not know that was going to be the single. Okay. And I had major anxieties in the studio. Absolutely. I couldn't perform.
Is that your first time in a studio?
Except for our demo.
Right.
And we had been in the studio for that Sounds of Deep Ellum.
But those must have been low pressure
compilation
compared to the
yeah, exactly. And we went all the way over to Wales, and we were without support system. We couldn't go home after we were.
You did that in Wales?
Yeah, that's where the producer was from.
Okay, interesting.
And we went out to what's it called? Rockville Studios, famous from the Queen movie.
Okay, yeah.
That same studio that they're.
Wow. So
we were out there, and so we didn't really have a support system. You couldn't go home and recharge. You went a few feet away and went to sleep, and you were just. It was difficult, and I was having major anxiety, and I couldn't play my parts. And so Robbie Blunt came in and played a lot of my parts on the first record. Huh. Robbie Blunt, Robert Plant's guitar player.
Okay, wow.
Yeah, I don't play on Circle of Friends. He's playing my part. He came in, I had to show him my part note for note because they wanted it on nylon string. I didn't play nylon string. Sure. But not just nylon string. You have a $100,000 contract, so we need hits from you, dude. So we had signed a contract. There was a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
I couldn't just play whatever. It had to be like play that classical guitar so it can be on pop radio. They needed somebody else to do it. Huh. And so he came in and did that, and he played some on a song called Now, and he played some on a song called The Wheel, and he plays some on Keep Coming Back as well. He's playing the slide on Keep Coming Back. So yeah, he played. I had major anxiety.
Wow.
In the studio, and it was. I didn't know what anxiety was I didn't know why I couldn't do what I was doing, and I didn't realize what anxiety was and heart palpitations and all the things, and major learning thing. But then the second record came around and I killed it, and I slayed that dragon. Second record, I definitely made up for it in the second record. No question.
It's funny because I was trying to be a musician and actor. Most the high pressure for me was going into like a room where you're supposed to be pretending you're somewhere else with someone in this high emotional scene, somebody that's reading like this, and I just couldn't get over it. And so like I can so relate to that anxiety. Like I just feel like nobody talks about that, but I feel like everybody's got to be going through that. I mean, like you're not prepared. Like all of a sudden you're just getting everything that you think you want, and it's not what you thought it was. And it's got to be crazy.
Yeah. And we really loved in what we were doing. It was precious to us, you know. We'd create this thing, and the people around it, we thought we didn't want to lose what we had. So how do you do that and sort of make this record that's going to be, how do you make that transition and not lose what you are? And that was tough.
Yeah, because it's like when you're that successful band that's playing clubs, it's like the single isn't really a thing. You don't even think about that kind of thing. And every song is somebody's favorite song that's been coming.
Yeah. We had a song called Cleopatra that was the biggest song we'd play every night. I Want to Be Your Cleopatra. And everybody thought that would be the song. It's not even on the record.
Yeah.
We never recorded it. Yeah.
Huh. Wow. For a second, I want to, because this is Dallas Famous, I know there are a lot of successful acts that are musicians or whatever that come out of Dallas, but it seems like not as easy to do. It seems like this isn't the greatest support system. Like we just recently had a Sounds of Deep Ellum record that came out. Did not get any record label people to Dallas to look at these bands. You know what I mean? So like.
Really? A record just came out?
Last year. That's what I'm saying. Sounds of Deep Ellum, and because it goes along with the Deep Ellum 150th anniversary, and it's got like Cure for Paranoia and Stone Mecca, I think, and it's like a bunch of local artists, and it's great. But
was the Observer getting behind it and things?
Yeah, it's got promoted and stuff.
Okay.
But I guess what I'm saying is it didn't. I mean, and we're living in a different time. Like at that time, if you're making a record, it's not everybody's doing that, and anyway, it's something that like. What I've heard more than anything else on this show is you have to leave Dallas, have success, and then you come back and everybody embraces you. But you did not do that. You actually got embraced before you left, it sounds like. So
we had the exact opposite thing happen. We were successful here, got successful everywhere else, came back, and it was a ghost town.
Huh.
A lot of people were not happy with and had growing pains and losing us, whatever. And all of a sudden we were a commercial band on MTV, and just like, a lot of people were not into the new band. And it was a new band. We had a new drummer, and we had a new guitar, had a rhythm guitar player in the band, because we didn't want a keyboard. There were keyboards all on the first record, but we didn't want a keyboard player. So we had Westbert Martin come and play kind of keyboard parts on guitar. And we were different. And Brandon Ailey, the drummer, who was the heartbeat of the band, wasn't the drummer any longer. And Matt Chamberlain, the drummer for 10 Hands, came on board. And so we were a different band, and not everybody was into it locally. I mean, a new crowd of people, like, knew us from the radio in Dallas and stuff. I mean, the shows were bigger and bigger, but there was some growing pains in Dallas, and with the media, and a lot of people gave us a hard time, for sure. Yeah.
I mean, that's a resentment that other people succeeded, or
sellout stuff, Yeah. Then what you say, it's like, I don't know. I mean, the thing I'm proud about that song is it was the least changed song. I mean, that's the way we played the song. It sounds like it did when we played it live. They didn't do anything to that song, except there's a different drummer. So I'm proud of that song, because that is the way we wrote it, and that's the way it sounds. And they didn't mess with that one, and it was the hit that so there you go.
Yeah.
It's kind of encouraging. Like, wow, you are hearing stuff, even though you're young. You know what the hell you're doing. It's like, actually, you do know what you're doing.
Yeah. God, that's. I mean, everyone like living in LA. Everyone's like, oh well, if you get the contract, you're going to have to listen to everybody else. And like, I never had that experience. Like, nobody gave me any money, so I didn't have to answer anybody. But interesting. Okay, so. Let's go to, you play with a lot of people now. I've seen you with at least 5 or 6 different sets of group, from the Dead cover stuff to Hand Hands I've seen you play with. I've seen you play just other stuff with Mike Dillon. You love to play, obviously.
Sure.
What does it take for you to go and play with somebody? Like, what is it what's in your head? What do you have to like go do something?
An invitation.
Oh yeah, that's it. It's got to be harder than that.
I don't want to give you a cheap answer, but I'm probably cheap. No, I love to play. I've never been a person that shows up with my guitar, let me sit in, because that is creepy to me. But I'll play with anybody. I love to improvise, and I'll play with anybody. I love sitting with people, and I love to improvise. And tonight I get to improvise with my buddy Gerard Bendix, who's a drummer. Him and Kim Corbett, who I spoke of earlier. Who was in BL Lacerda, the improv group that came to our school. Him and Gerard and I have a band called Tidbits, which is a 100% improv band. Oh, nice. And we haven't played in, I don't know, man, 7 years, 8 years.
Well, Kim's don't need to practice.
It's funny. Every time we practiced, the band almost broke up. It's true.
Well, that would be why you'd be an improv band, I guess, right?
Yes, because as soon as we had any kind of constraints, we just had resentment towards one another. It was like improv band 100%. Otherwise, we couldn't be it. But anyway, so I'm playing with Gerard tonight for the first time in some time, and it's going to be an improv, just guitar and drums and improvising and cool. Things like that. Yeah.
Well, we are on a podcast, and this tonight is actually months ago.
Sure, I figured that.
But what is coming up when people hear this is the Dead thing at Deep Ellum Art Company.
Nice.
Yeah. So why don't we talk about that for a little bit?
Sure, love to.
So it sounds like it was sort of. So how did it start for you? How did you get involved with playing with the guys and starting to play Dead songs on stage in front of people?
Well, I got a phone call one day from an old buddy named Mike Merriman, and he invited me down to RC's. It's an old club called RC's, and people have been going down there and playing Dead tunes on the weekend. And he called me and said, "Hey man, you want to come down to RC's? We're playing Grateful Dead songs." And my answer was, why? I mean, the Dead were touring. You could go see the Dead. And I liked the Dead at the time already. And I was like, well, why are you doing that? He said, I don't know, just for fun. And I was like, well, okay. I mean, to me, I would want to jam and make up songs. It's like, why are you playing?
Yeah, I already have a question about that, but I'll hold it about you becoming and playing all these Jerry parts all the time after only one or not only one or two, but it seemed like that seems like a leap in a way.
Yeah, that is a whole nother thing for sure. Yeah, but
back to getting in with the Dead.
Yeah. When I started with them, let's see, they were already a band. They were playing at RCs and shit like that, and a buddy of mine, Scott Parkin, approached Doak at Club Dada about doing something on Saturday afternoons before they open up in the afternoon. And the idea was, because there were people selling T-shirts. I mean, it was very active in Deep Ellum at that time. When we played, there were vendors outside. And then they just started being there all the time. People selling T-shirts on the street. And so his idea was, let's bring the vendors inside and let's play a Grateful Dead tune over the sound system. I mean, the show from last week or whatever, a recent show, and Deadheads can hang out. And he worked on KZPS at the time, and he called it the Dead Thing. And he was like, come on, Deadheads, come down to Club Down in the afternoon. And it was a shit ton of people came from the very first time. And word got out to what was called Wallstead. What a long, strange trip it's been. And that's the band that played at RC's. And so they came over to the Dead Thing, and they were the band for a while. And Scott Johnson and I can't think of names when I'm supposed to think of names.
Okay. We'll figure them out. It's the worst.
He knows his name, the guy who played guitar and starred the whole thing. Anyway,
I feel like you told me that name, and now I can't find my phone.
It's just not in front of me right now. Anyway, Sam Burkhart. Yeah. Sam Burkhart, the guitar player. But so that was happening for a while, and Scott invited me down. He said, well, you should come see this thing. So I go down to Dada and walk in the door, and there's just people are just packed in there. And I look on the stage, and there's Scott Johnson, who I didn't know at the time, and he had a mohawk, and he's jumping around the stage, strumming his bass like a guitar, and they're playing Dead tunes. And I was like, that dude's going to be my friend. I can tell. So I like immediately glommed on to that guy. That's funny. That's how I met Scott. He was playing Dead tunes on the stage, and now we're best friends and playing together in the Dead thing again.
Nice.
And anyway, that band eventually became known as the Dead Thing because it happened every weekend. And Sam moved on. They had lots of different people that came and went, and I did time with Scott for about a year and a half, and then we both moved to Seattle for about 4 years, came back and did it again, did the Dead Thing again, and just many people did the Dead Thing on and off, and it was always huge. It really was.
Yeah.
But that's how I started doing it.
I guess it was a pretty big group of Deadheads in Dallas at that time then, or the area.
Yeah, and SMU Deadheads, that was kind of a thing, college Deadheads was, maybe it still is, but it really was then.
Yeah, it still is, I think. I mean, yeah, because I don't know, I feel like now, like all the big jam bands like skip Dallas, or a lot of them do, because they don't think that the scene's here. Maybe it's not here. I don't know. And then how did Forgotten Space start?
Forgotten Space started some years later. The Dead Thing kind of fizzled, and different people tried to make it happen, and it mercifully just kind of stopped for a while because it didn't have the spark that it did. Not as many people were coming, and just it just wasn't quite the thing. So it needed to sort of go away for a minute. And this guy named Lance Deal worked at the Sugar Shack in Lower Greenville. He owned the club. And there was a Sunday afternoon he wanted to play Dead music. So he got my number somehow and invited me over just to play some Dead music. It was his club. He's like, it's my club. I want to play Dead, so we're going to do that. So like right when he walked in the door, he was the drummer, and he'd get another. And Jerry Saraceni was the other drummer. So that's how I met Jerry.
Oh, okay.
A random Sunday afternoon. And I forget who the other Will might have been there. I couldn't tell you who else was playing. And we played Dead tunes on this afternoon. And semi-regularly, he would invite us back. And this guy named Phil, who was in, what's the name of that song? Lost Sailor. Phil from Lost Sailor. He did it for a while, and we were kind of called Lost Sailor. And then we started playing fairly regularly. We did a New Year's Eve, and it was really packed. We started to become a thing. We started playing pretty good, and it became a sort of a solid cast of... Will started playing keyboards for real. Will's a bass player.
He is.
Yeah. Huh. He had a band called Mellow Ship, and Will is absolutely a bass player.
Wow.
And around that time, he was like, well, I can play keyboard, and he just started playing keyboards. Like he's like Phil in that he was like, okay, I'll play keyboard.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
I'll play Dead music, and he just started. I don't know if he knows one song that's not a Dead tune. I don't know if he could sit down and play a piano piece. I mean, that's not a diss in any way. That's just
it's just like all his.
Yeah, that's what he knows.
Entry.
I could be wrong. Will, you can call me and tell me I'm dead wrong.
Hey, man, I can play Beethoven, damn it.
Tell me I'm dead wrong. Dead wrong, that's a good name for a band. See,
yeah.
Actually, Scott Prosser wanted to call a band Dead Wrong because he's funny like that. Anybody knows Scott. But
and
where was I? I forget.
Well, I mean, we were talking about Forgotten Space. You talked about how you met everybody.
Yeah, and then that kind of became more solid, and there was discussion. Well, let's make this a band. I think Will thought of the name Forgotten Space, which I confess, and anybody who's talked to me, I never was totally into the name. I thought it was a little hippy dippy, not only have you forgotten, but you've spaced. I've forgotten and spaced, man. It's like I forgot and spaced, dude.
Right.
It's all good. But
I don't know. I always thought it was like Forgotten Space. It's like we're in this like joined moment that everyone else doesn't know about. They kind of like don't remember that it's there.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's less.
I like that.
Less like acid related, I guess. I don't know.
I eventually liked it because, I mean, much like the police, you don't think the cops, the police are the police, and Forgotten Space is Forgotten Space.
Yeah. I remember, I saw you guys at Club. That was when I first started taking photos, and I didn't even know what I was doing. I got some trippy edits and got some good photos, but that's when it first started. And honestly, you were one of the people that framed it for me, what I'm doing now. We were at the Dead and Company lot before the show, or maybe it was somewhere else. But you just said, it's really what you're doing is important, documenting the scene. That was like what you said, and I guess I was new, so I didn't look at it like that, and so it really meant something to me.
Oh, good.
And kept kind of framed my path since then. So that was kind of cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
because you are, dude, and you're really good too.
Well, thank you, but Forgotten Space was one of the places where I cut my teeth and got better at it.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, because I shot you guys a ton back in the early, I even shot you guys in certain states of mind that I haven't done since
Oh, I see.
Yeah, but we won't talk about that. What else, we're talking about the tidbits, but what other music are you working on right now, or projects are you working on right now?
Well, I'm in transition because I just moved back I moved to Wimberley about 4 years ago, not quite after the pandemic. I guess it was 2020. It was right before the election. And I moved down to Wimberley. Edie got some land, and she'd been wanting to have some land, Edie Brickell, singer, and she wanted a jam space in Texas. I wanted a space in Texas. And so she'd been looking around. She was like, do you want to live? She wanted somebody to stay on the property when they weren't going to be there. And so she'd been talking to me for years. I'm going to get some land and you're going to stay there and blah, blah, blah. Like, okay, sure. I'll do that. And lo and behold, they did get some land. And all of a sudden, Paul was really into it, and they got some nice land. And there's a little home on it. There's a little barn it actually was a wedding venue. So there's a house, and there's a big barn that was the wedding venue that we played in for about a year. And there's a little shack, and that's where Paul recorded that 7 Psalms record, that last record he recorded. And there's a documentary about it and him living in Wimberley and everything. Well, that was here. That's where I was living. Yeah. And he recorded that whole record in the shack down there, 7 Psalms. Amazing, amazing record. And then we had they eventually expanded next door, and we had our own jam space next door that was dedicated to New Bohemians. And we recorded a record last year, right before Brad passed away. And what's interesting about it is that Brad, our bass player, passed away. And what's interesting about it is before we did it, we kind of had decided we were going to make one more recording. Little did we know that was absolutely going to be the case. But it's really interesting that was the intention, to make one more. And then Brad actually passed away. So we have a record that we're going to finish.
Oh, this one's not even out yet.
No, we haven't finished it. Man. So we recorded a record last summer down there. And it's taken me a minute to be able to reapproach the record and play on it. I have work to do on it. Yeah. And I've been having trouble getting centered when I play, but I'm ready to do it now. Anyway, I've moved back from Wimberley, but was there for about 4 years, and things kind of had settled down there. I lived on the property, and I lived in a tiny home on the property. I've moved that tiny home up here to Dallas, and so I've moved back here. So I'm kind of restarting. Your question was, what am I doing now? And I'm kind of restarting everything, recalibrating everything to Dallas, and I've just been booking gigs. My friend Dan from Dan's Silverleaf up in Denton, about 2 months ago, I was going through my address book, and I was like, Dan's like, anything that you're playing, if you want to play here anytime. He just gave me an open invitation. I can play at Dan's anytime, anything I'm doing. So I texted him. I was like, Dan, what's up? I'm going to put something together. I want to play your place. And which was kind of pressure on me. So I just was like, what am I going to do? So I just texted the dream band, as far as I was concerned. Paul Slavens from Ten Hands, Big Al Emmert, who was a Munch Puppy friend of mine. Munch Puppies were our group of friends when we went to Booker T. Washington. Okay. That was the name of our group of friends. So he's a Muncher. He's a Munch Puppy. John Bush is in the band as well, total Muncher. And my friend Dave Monzi, who is a great bass player. He plays with He's in Austin. He's a session player. Cat Stevens. I could just go down. He just plays with tons of people, but he's from Dallas. So him and my friend Joe Crump on the horn. I'll probably have Danny O'Brien. It's basically New Bohemians, Ten Hands, and Brave Combo had a baby, and the band's called Tote. Tote. Tote.
Is someone singing in that band?
Yeah, Paul. So far, it's been an improv. We are going to have solid tunes, and it's going to have structure. But for now, we've only improvised. Okay. And we've done one gig at Dan's, and the way we improvised is I wrote a set list.
Like songs that don't exist yet.
Yeah, that we were going to play.
I love that.
And the first song was called "The First Jam Ever," which I thought, this will be a great thing. So we went down the whole list, and I had a whole list of prompts basically. And Paul made up songs, and he sang a whole bunch. But that's a new band called Tote. Comes from our vernacular. I mentioned Munch Puppies. So at Arts Magnet High School, our group of musician friends, we were known as Munch Puppies. because our comic book, it's a long story I won't go into. I mean, we would do certain things that make us hungry. We would eat food, you know.
Okay.
We smoked a lot of pot and played a lot of music. Basically, we're pot smoking kids. And we were known as munch puppies. And I
don't know why I didn't pick up on that until you explained it.
and still munchers. So that's where that came from. And yeah, so that's what. And tote, where that name came from is we had a whole vernacular. Like deaf tote wick means definitely totally wicked. Deaf tote wick. So we still do that. We just talk to each other like that. Dude, tote. I mean, tote, you know. So we have a band that's called Tote. And so the whole band is basically about our vernacular and just freaking out and just being dumbasses. And it went really, really well. But we have some tunes, but it's going to be more and more solid. We are going to have real songs. It's not just going to be improvised every time, but it's going to be completely different every time. I think we'll probably tackle artists as well.
Like you cover certain bands.
Artists or even subjects. You know, I think we should do Tote does Tolkien and do a Tolkien night. I know if Paul Slavin's listening right now, but that's for you, Paul.
Yeah,
I know that you would want to do
for that too.
Exactly.
He's on the list. It's just I can't get my butt to Denton. It seems like, but he's
awesome.
On the list. You know, I don't want to end too somber, but I did want to ask you a little bit. Well, for one, Carter Albright it's a name that's been brought up on this show, and if you could just tell us a little bit about his significance in the Dallas music scene.
Sure. You know, my Carter was already. I didn't know Carter for the first few years. He was playing music in town and things like that, and was already doing the Dead thing and stuff like that. And I met him doing the Dead thing. He was playing some keyboards, and he was just kind of around. Him and Scott Johnson knew each other really well. And Scott was putting together a version of Cosmic Chimp, his band from the 80s. Great band. And I was going to play guitar, and he invited Carter. And I lived in Deep Ellum at that time on Main Street in Walton in a warehouse there. And they came over and we recorded demos, and Carl was the drummer. And so that was a band. And that's when I met him. And immediately had what a vibe. You know, he had this tattoo on his arm that was dedicated. Him and all his friends had this tattoo on their arms that were matching, dedicated to their friend that they had lost at an early age. And he was just a very viscerally intense person, always thinking about religion, the significance of life, and also just funny as all get out. I mean, he was hilarious. I mean, just what a quirky dude. This is just, I try to relay the story, but this really happened. And people don't, I'll just say it. So we were in New York and we're recording the It's Like This record. No, not It's Like This. It's called Stranger Things. And so we're in New York and we're staying in this place, and we rent this little bed and breakfast. We rent the whole top floor. And so we're all like, you know, he's in one room and I'm in another, but it's a hotel or whatever. So it's at night, and he's in his room and he's laughing. He's laughing, and I kind of poke my head. What are you doing? And he's got a magazine, and it's kitties. And he literally is sitting there looking at little kitties in the magazine and laughing hysterically out loud. And it's just like, and it's hard to tell people that is so Carter. And to really, for people like, yeah, that sounds kind of weird. But no, it's more like he was attracted to genuine things. It was genuinely cute and cracking him up. He was attracted to real things. And he was really interesting, incredibly talented. I always considered him, I would say this is a joke, but it actually was true. He was the real musician of the band. And the way he got in the band is we were going to be...
New Bohemians, you mean?
Yeah, with New Bohemians, is that we were going to be playing over at the Gypsy Tea Room. We haven't played in some time. And we were in the studio demoing some things, and I was like, I know a keyboard player, let's get him in there. So I called Carter, and he came in and just was in a room by himself, you know, with headphones on. Edie liked him immediately, of course, and he was just playing along with stuff, and he immediately was killer. And we had a gig the next day. I was like, dude, you must play. Didn't know one song. His first gig was cold, just over there on the other side of the stage, and played along with every song. Cold. Just unbelievable. Carter was unbelievable. And when he gave you a compliment, you just felt like, wow, that means something. You know, I just respected him so incredibly much. I really, really respected him, and God, he was so funny too.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, thanks for sharing that with us.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I mean, we're gonna look out for Totes, and you're gonna be doing shows like around.
Yeah, Tote is a real thing, and then the Dead thing. Those are the two things I'm doing right now. I'm actually I'm gonna make a solo record.
Oh, nice.
I've been threatening to do that for a long time since I've never made one, but I actually I'm in the process. I actually have already started, and that'll be another band that'll be my band. So
cool.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to that.
Are you gonna have singing on that, or
yeah, I'm gonna sing.
You're gonna sing.
Yeah,
I'm looking forward to that.
I am.
I remember thinking, like, I was like, well, in Forgotten Space, he doesn't sing because he's got to play those parts. Like he doesn't need to sing with what he's doing, you know. So,
I've been singing in the Dead thing though.
Okay. Oh, cool.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to all of that. I don't know when I'm going to make it to one, maybe the 28th. Okay. Well, hey, thanks again for taking the time and talking to us. It's been great having you, Kenny, and we'll be looking out for all the projects.
Well, thank you. I hope it wasn't too boring. I hope people enjoyed.
I think they will.
I do. I appreciate you. Thank you.
Thanks to Kenny, and thanks for tuning in all season to the Dallas Famous podcast. If you want to catch Kenny Withrow live, don't miss him at Deep Ellum Art Co. on December 28th for a special night with The Dead Thing, a tribute to the Grateful Dead. Then mark your calendars for January 4th when Kenny returns to Art Co. with his all-improv project, Totes, for a one-of-a-kind musical experience. Thank you again to the Deep Ellum Community Center for letting us record there. Theme song, Unstoppable by Salim Nirala. I'm going to take the rest of the year off, so have a happy holiday, and we'll see you next year. Thank you so much for listening, and feel free to binge.